I read 3 to 5 books every single week and 6 to 10 research articles because I am a doctoral candidate. Today we are going to digest chapter 3 of Pedagogy of the Oppressed. A couple things stuck out to me, but really predominantly understanding education through the lens of love. And I really want to challenge us to not limit our view on love through solely romance. You have to understand love through the lens of liberation, and through that lens you also understand the power of community. You understand the power of liberation. You understand the power of unity. You understand the power of togetherness. You understand love in its totality when you solely remove your monolithic lens of love through romance and your experience of romantic love, right? And not having that be your center understanding on truly the power of love. And one quote that stuck out to me that really still has my gears turning is human beings aren't meant to be silenced. And when we are thinking about this through the lens of education, this through the lens of the classroom experience, so many of us have the touch point of our voice not being heard or being silenced by whether it was an educator, whether it was another peer, another classmate, an admin. And I don't think we understand how that theme of silence is really deeply seated and also so hard to unlearn, especially in adulthood. And I don't want to limit this experience of silence to only the classroom, but when we think about family dynamics, when we think about friendship dynamics, when we think about romantic dynamics, when we think about how we interact with the world around us, how so many of us opt to being silent. And that really goes against what it means to be human, what it means to really use your voice, what it means to really be liberated. You cannot be liberated in silence. And then this calls into question the power dynamic of dominance and submission when we are speaking about oppression, right? And the importance of dialogue. In chapter 3, it says dialogue is an act of creation. It must not serve as a crafty instrument for domination of another person. And so again, when we're understanding what is the importance of speech, what is the importance of us holding and sharing true dialogue? What is the intention? What is the goal reached? Again, what is the purpose of dialogue? To be able to give language to what you're feeling, to be able to give language to your love, to be able to give language to your hurt, to be able to give language to your freedom, ultimately. And I believe that chapter 3 is so important in this book. I don't think it's the most important chapter. I believe that's chapter 4, and I will explain why. But it's so important for us to understand truly community through the lens of courage and what it means to start to break out of our own fears, to also help thy neighbor, to help your community through this act of language, through this act of liberation, and stepping past your own fear. And I think a lot of times we have this fascination with, once I'm not scared, then I'll do it. But also understanding a core component of liberation is to do it scared. Not to do it fearful, but to do it scared. And understanding the complexities of what it means to be human, right, is you're going to feel the emotions of being scared and nervousness, but that cannot be your cage of silence. And I think so many of us are so used to opting to silencing ourselves because we have been conditioned to be silent, whether it's from a parent, whether it's from a friend, whether it's from an educator, whether it's from a former lover. And so even when they are not present, even when now it's just you in adulthood, you're in this invisible cage where you opt to silencing yourself. And then I think that's where a lot of resentment starts to grow. Resentment toward yourself. And then it's kind of like this feedback loop. And then it's like this stagnation that it's so hard to like break through to yourself that you can speak up, right? Another quote that stuck out that said, being loving is important to dialogue. It is dialogue. To love, to express your love is one of the greatest dialogues, right? And again, I want us not to limit the experience, the feeling of loving to solely romance. But what does it truly mean to love your community? What does it truly mean to hold and share dialogue with people through this lens of love as liberation? I also highlighted that dialogue cannot exist without humility. And I think this also comes from this conversation of everybody wanting to be right. Everybody wanting their voice to be the biggest, the baddest, the sternest, the voice of authority, without understanding there is this humility that you must have to operate in community. You must be willing to hear all parties and not hearing from this lens of like critical critique, because I do think critique is necessary, but I also do believe that most people aren't equipped with the tools to ethically or critically critique anybody or anything. And so your pseudo critique is rooted truly in judgment or through domination. And once we start to have that true conversation, that your voice of authority isn't to have this like sense of goodness, but the sense to dominate others, I think we then have to pay attention to the intention of the dialogue in which you're truly like sharing. And I think that is a tough conversation that a lot of people aren't willing to come to. Because again, it requires you to do a lot of internal reflection and question your why. Why do you have to be the dominating voice? Why do you feel that your experience, your seniority is better than the next person, even though we're all coming into this community with valid lived experiences, with valid solutions, with valid lenses of the world, narratives? But why do you feel like yours is the most important? Is it because you have certain academic prestige? Is it because you are in a profession for X, Y, and Z? And this is not necessarily a conversation about the validity in one's expertise. It's a conversation of humility, especially as you're entering spaces in academia. You really realize, if you have a good and strong academic tribe behind you, the importance of different voices and perspectives, the importance of all of us coming together, the importance of all of us sharing conversation. You really, really start to see the importance in that for us to get to the next step collectively. But I think a lot of people aren't interested in using their voice in a collective measure because they want that accolade solely to themselves. This chapter was also rooted in hope and what it means to have hope, what it means to be moved by hope, what it means to be hopeless. And really, hope without action is merely dreaming. And something from this chapter I wrote down was hopelessness is a form of silence, of denying the world and fleeing from it. And I want us to remember not only the equation of hope, which also requires action, but the importance of hope as it relates to liberation, as it relates to like critical thinking. We cannot view everything through a pessimistic lens. We cannot view everything through this Debbie Downer. You need hope to be liberated. You need hope to love. You need hope to keep going. You need hope to keep fighting. And so I think a lot of these words have been like mystified in a very like whimsical way, but their importance is vital. Love is vital to living in the experience of life. Hope is vital to the human experience. Liberation is vital to both you and I's life.